Hi there, folks, and welcome back to another edition of Giant Talk. As you know, I am your host, Roger, from There Be Giants, and as is often the case, I love to speak to people that really interest me and do interesting work. There's always a connection with OKRs, and I'm really pleased that we're ticking both those boxes today, because I have my lovely colleague, Jo, with us. Hi there, Jo.
Hey, Rog. Hello. And I'm happy to tick those boxes as well.
Excellent. Now, we thought we'd do this because psychological safety is something that we've talked about a fair bit on the podcast, but maybe not so much, maybe perhaps more from the theoretical point of view, and you can bring some sort of practical hands-on experience from working with clients on this. So I thought, that always kind of trumps what it says in the theory books. But before we launch into that, I'm aware that there's potentially some of our listeners that might not actually know what psychological safety is, or perhaps think it's something that it's not. So can we kind of kick off by just exploring a little bit about that? Oh, and also, sorry, I nearly forgot. Please do tell people what you do for us as well.
We're just assuming that everyone knows every giant.
Yeah, exactly.
Like Roger said, I'm Jo. I've been with There Be Giants now coming up to 3 years this year. Primarily my role now is looking after our OKR Coach Academy. So I run it, make sure that everyone gets what they need from the academy, and we're making sure it's relevant. But also do lots of consulting as well within sort of the projects in There Be Giants. So have come across, quite interesting, I guess, experience in relation to psychological safety. And as well, my background, being in learning and development, training, I've come across it a lot in terms of how it impacts people, training, learning, all sorts of things. So, bringing lots of things to the table today, Rog.
Excellent. So, look, why don't you tell us a little bit more about psychological safety itself?
Yeah, so I think, first of all, like you said, there is a bit of a misconception sometimes when we introduce psychological safety with clients or work with clients, such train it, that actually psychological safety is this thing where everyone's just really nice to each other, everyone just kind of, like there's that kind of coddliness, I guess, within a team or within
soft
a group
and fluffy.
Of people. Yeah, and it's not. I mean, of course, there's an element of, there is an element of respect and that kind of side of things. But really, what psychological safety is about, Timothy R. Clark from the Leader Factor kind of sums it up and explains it in a really nice way. That it's basically a condition where human beings feel included, safe to learn, safe to contribute, and safe to challenge the status quo, all without fear of being embarrassed or marginalized or kind of punished in some way. So it's being able to challenge the status quo and, kind of references this thought of increasing intellectual friction. So we're getting that intellectual friction amongst team members, but without having that social friction. So, me and you, Rog, we could have an intellectual conversation. We could disagree. We could, you could bring something to the table and I could really disagree with that idea or that thing that you brought to the table. But it doesn't mean that me and you have, socially
exactly.
fell out. We could still go for a gin after or whatever we want to do. That's fine. But it's about making sure that if we are disagreeing with an idea or we're seeing things that come up, that we feel safe, that we can challenge that. And that's where we get that true creativity, innovation. And without it, you're never going to really challenge the status quo.
I guess people are just going to be too nervous, perhaps, about making that contribution, either because they don't feel like they'll be listened to, or maybe they've seen others try in the past and they've been slapped down. There's a whole host of reasons why they might be reluctant to.
So many things. And I think as well, with psychological safety, those people feeling safe enough to do that, so safe to contribute or challenge the status quo, it can take quite a while for teams to build that. So build that, what Timothy R. Clark refers to as challenger safety. Because it takes building up those habits of, okay, we've challenged someone, we've challenged an idea, and I think, bad happened to me, or nothing bad happened to that other person that, you know, did it. But it can take a long time to build, but it can go in an instant. So as soon as somebody then feels reminded of a time or a place where they didn't feel safe, that's it. You've kind of gone straight back to, well, I'm not doing that again. And it can be quite a scary thought for some people, I guess.
Essentially, it's about building trust, isn't it, in that respect? And I suppose one of the things which leaders and managers have to tackle is when they get new members of the team joining, you know, whilst there may be a high level of psychological safety within the team that they're joining, perhaps previous scars, previous experiences from elsewhere, they still carry with them. So they still might need to build up that trust as well. So, you know, just because it's there doesn't mean that it's there for everyone, does it?
No, exactly. And again, it's about that person, like you just said there, could be bringing up old scars, could be bringing up, you know, their own situations or experiences that could end up also, in some instances, maybe rocking the team as well. So the team could feel really psychologically safe, but then actually somebody else coming into that team, actually, can I say this to that person? They're going to take it the wrong way. They've, you know, and it can change the whole dynamics of the team, which I guess is really, and you see it happen as well. You see it happen in, maybe going slightly off topic here, but say if we're running a workshop. So if you're running a workshop, like any sort of workshop, OKR setting or whatever that looks like, you might be working with one team and you might be getting lots of different ideas, lots of people speaking up, lots of people saying things. As soon as somebody else comes into that session, it can really...
It can close things down again, can't it?
You can feel it as well. You can feel when, okay, that's different. Like, you know, people were challenging each other, people were saying things, and now, you know, I don't mean to say a CEO, because the CEO is the person that always, you know, disrupts things. But say a CEO then comes into that workshop and, you know, everyone just falls silent. You kind of think, okay,
don't want to say the wrong thing, not in front of the boss.
No, exactly.
Damage my prospects. Yeah, exactly. So, talking of bosses, talking of leaders, right? There are plenty of leaders, and I would say I've worked for a few of them myself and over the years, who kind of really like managing people through a healthy bit of fear. So they are the ones who are kind of right at the minimal end of psychological safety, but reckon that they still get results. So, okay, you know, all the research shows us that psychological safety really does make a difference, but just why should leaders care now? Why should they care about this now?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think it's around, you know, why should leaders care? Well, one, I think, first of all, it's a bit of a tough market out there in terms of jobs at the minute.
Yeah.
And actually, if I'm an employee and I'm looking maybe for, I'm not happy in my job, or I'm not, you know, I'm looking elsewhere for something, I'm going to then match up what I'm doing now to maybe something else. And if that doesn't quite match up with, if I'm like, I don't feel safe in this job, I feel like I've got low levels of respect or whatever in my job, and I'm not able to kind of contribute, I'm not able to do things, that could push people out of a job, like, ultimately. But also what we're trying to do is build people's autonomy and build up this, I guess, freedom where people don't feel like they're just being micromanaged, and they can kind of do their roles without, you know, being told what to do every 5 seconds.
So empowerment is what you're talking about there, isn't it?
Yeah, massively. You know, and that kind of links again to OKRs. You know, what we want to do is make sure that people feel as though you've got a clear end destination, you've got that clear outcome that you want, if you like, and you're allowing other people that opportunity to say, hang on a minute, hey, I can contribute to that, I can do something here. And you're giving that autonomy, that empowerment to other people, because without it, all you're going to be doing all the time as a leader is just telling everyone what to do all the time. So as a leader, why should I care? Well, I want to kind of give other people the chance to do things. So, and again, as a leader, I can kind of then hopefully take things off my plate. I'm not having control over absolutely everything. and you're not kind of always being looked to as that person that makes every single decision. You're providing other people that opportunity to do that.
Yeah, and it would be really interesting to see if there's any data out there that can show a correlation between organizations with high levels of psychological safety and attrition rates. I mean, actually, this takes me back to something I read that was published by Google a few years ago, and they've got their own internal organizational consultancy called Rework. And when they asked, high performing teams across the business, what's the one characteristic of a team that makes it high performing, they said psychological safety. Now, okay, Google is a very, very innovative, experimental organization. I've just said Google and my phone's just burst into life. They're a very innovative, experimental organization. So you want to, they want to encourage those ideas and those crazy curveballs coming forward. So I can imagine why psychological safety is right at the top of the agenda for them. But it's interesting, in terms of how they define high performance, which is a lot of ideation work and, a lot of innovation work. If you're serious about that, what I'm hearing is it's good, you cannot afford to overlook psychological safety at all.
No, and actually, so Baby Giants, we run a scan by the Fearless organisation that we've kind of been trained through, and actually it's a PSI scan, and there is huge correlation between actual team effectiveness. It's a if you have like a really high PSI scan, so where the team feels safe and feels safe within the team, there is that kind of high leading indicator from your scan that you're going to have a very effective team, because actually you've got a team that wants to challenge each other, that has high levels of psychological safety when it comes to like attitude towards risk and failure, attitude to like asking for help, that kind of stuff. And if we're seeing high levels of that, also we're seeing high levels of team effectiveness. Whereas if you're going to see really low levels on that scan, and again, you're not. And if we're speaking to that kind of testing, learning, adapting, we're not getting that testing part. So people aren't testing, they're not learning, so then we're not adapting. So we're not kind of iterative in our approach. So
interesting. I remember reading as well. I think it was one of Amy Edmondson's books. Her example of how she managed to draw a line between low levels of psychological safety and huge bottom line hit to an organization. And she cited the example of Volkswagen and Dieselgate in America, because the CEO at that time, a chap called Ferdinand Piech, brilliant engineer, had been there, at the forefront of German automotive engineering for a good few decades, and well worthy of that CEO role. However, his attitude and approach was very autocratic, and often, leveraging fear and threats. And unfortunately, no one really felt safe enough to turn around to him and say, when you, even though you've made America the number one target market for us, America doesn't really consume diesels like Europe does, and consequently, in order to get under the level of the emissions regulations, particularly in California, they had to create these defeat devices to fool the emissions, and as a result of that, it cost them billions of dollars in America. And that was primarily put down to the fact that nobody would actually stand up to him and say, we're not actually properly set up for trying to get into the US market in the way that we are, in the models that we currently offer and the technologies that we currently have. So really, really interesting. Arguably, I think there's other examples like NASA and so on and so forth with the shuttle disaster. There's where
there's
people
hospital
have
ones.
100%. 100%. Yeah. You've got plenty of examples of where people have, not felt, possibly because of status and seniority, not felt, like a nurse didn't feel like they could challenge a a physician in perhaps an operating theatre or something, and something seriously has gone wrong. Yeah, it's a fascinating area. It's a fascinating area.
It is, and I always end up in a bit of a rabbit hole in my brain when I think about it all. And then next thing I'm like, oh wow, we've been in this conversation for however long, having a chat about it. And actually, just on that, on that rabbit hole kind of segue. As you were talking, I kind of was thinking about something we said right at the start about this misconception as well with psychological safety.
Yeah,
and I've ran team kind of debrief sessions on psychological safety where we've had a conversation as a team based on like survey results. And actually, sometimes what happens is kind of coming back to your point around why should leaders care about psychological safety? Growth.
Yeah.
So leaders should care about psychological safety because, and I'm not just talking like business growth, I'm talking like individual growth. So I'm thinking about an example specifically in mind where, you know, this team, again, they were a great team, you know, lots of kind of fun between them, banter, you know, all that kind of stuff, like really pride themselves on kind of being a bit of a, I guess, a chatty team and fun team. And they'd gotten to a point where actually, you know, what I was kind of calling out and seeing was they were really good at kind of bigging each other up and being like, oh, you know, you do this really well and you do this really well, da, 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 da. And they had a lot of sort of self-reflection of what they could do better. What I didn't see or a lot of what I felt was missing, and I called it out, was what they didn't do was tell each other maybe what they needed to improve on. And when I called it out, what the kind of leader was saying was, oh, well, you know, we don't really need to, because actually what we're doing is, you know, no one really does anything wrong. So no one really does anything wrong. So we don't need to sort of speak about it. We don't need people to say because no one does anything wrong, or you know, that kind of conversation. Actually, then what happened was when we were kind of then debriefing that and calling it out, other people in the team were like, well, actually, I'd really like to understand where I could do better and where I could improve.
Yeah.
But because in that team they didn't quite understand what psychological safety was, or like what it really, you know, was all about, is that they didn't want to hurt each other's feelings. So they didn't want to say to you like, oh, Rod, you know, I think X, Y, Z, you could do this better. They thought that might hurt someone's feelings. So it's like, well, no, actually the other person sat there going, I'd love to know what I could improve on because I want to grow. I want to do something differently and better, but no one's telling me, you know. So if I think I'm doing everything perfectly, how am I going to grow? How am I going to improve? So I know that was a little bit of a rabbit hole, a bit of a...
No, I think that's entirely relevant, Jo. I do think that's entirely relevant because, I mean, what you're doing is you're helping the listeners kind of get a little bit of an insight into, you know, the work that you've been doing with the teams actually on psychological safety and, you know, helping them to get their heads around it, what it is and what it isn't, and perhaps enabling them to make some breakthroughs. I mean, your point about growth for all, not just for the business, not just for the team, but also for the individuals. That goes back to Carol Dweck's work on growth mindset and yet being such an important part of organizations now. And I'm going to quote another one here, you know, McGregor and Doshi, when they did their really important work on the different types of performance, where you've got tactical and adaptive, and it's actually adaptive performance nowadays, which is what makes the difference. Everybody can kind of hit the targets and do the numbers and hit the quotas, and that's just you know, that's baseline performance. That's what we do. It's those that can that can adapt, adjust, and as they go through that process, learn and continue to iterate. And it's that which makes the biggest difference in modern organizations and workplaces.
Yeah. Which was why it complements the OKR methodology so well, Rog.
Well, funny you should say that. Yes, exactly. exactly. So is there anything more that you can tell us about the work that you've done with clients on psychological safety? You've given that great example about that team getting that insight. Is there anything else that you can share with us? Any other nuggets?
Yeah, I mean, so, you know, the work that I do is not just kind of going in and running team debriefs in scans and actually using actual data and results to kind of debrief psychological safety within teams and kind of start conversations. Although that is that is where you see a lot of really interesting conversations, to be honest, and really a lot of in-depth, insightful reflections and conversations come up. I can talk a little bit about that if you want me to.
Go for it.
So what we do is we go into, like I said, it's through, we've gone through course and been certified in a fearless organisation scan, where we go in, we run the scan survey. It's a really simple survey. It's got 7 questions. We split it into 4 different domains, and what that gives us is information and data on 4 different kind of domain areas of linked to psychological safety. And that enables us to, one, as a consultant, kind of build a bit of a hypothesis, paint a bit of a picture from these scan results. Bearing in mind, some of these teams we've never worked with, we only know a little bit about. We then kind of go back to the team, share the results, share a bit of this hypothesis, start the conversation, and then what that does is you just kind of facilitate and build on that. And then by the end of that debrief session, that team session, we hold each other to, they hold each other to account of actually what are they going to do differently, and what are they going to do as a team to ensure that actually we're building on these areas that need support. And we link it all back to business goals as well, Rog. We kind of say right at the start, for us to, if we want to increase psychological safety, this is the reason we want to do it, because we want to see an improvement in these sort of areas. One team actually quite without even the link being there to begin with, they were seeing a dip in creativity and like innovation. And then again, from all the scan results, it was when we kind of came to it, actually, you could really see the link, and you could really understand actually where it was falling short. So again, we were able to really tangibly kind of make those links in terms of what we could then do as a team to improve that and to support people to get creativity and reach, the goals that you want to see. So that's one element, sort of going in and running scans and surveys and team debriefs. Other element, we, as I'm sure some of the listeners will know, we have the OCAR coaches. So we train people in actually how to support psychological safety as well. Train leaders as well when we do the consulting, making sure that leaders are kind of leading from the front, I guess, and role modelling psychological safety.
Sure.
I don't know what else really.
So when you're training, when you're doing the training on the Coach Academy, and you're introducing psychological safety, do you see light bulbs suddenly switch on?
Oh, yeah.
Is this something which they've kind of always sensed and always knew, but never really known, so to speak?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, again, you have those conversations where and again, I always, I had a wise colleague who, from Giants actually taught me, with psychological safety, we've got lots of different models, we've got lots of different kind of things that we can draw on. The first thing she always said to me was, all models are false, but some are helpful. So it's like we're saying, kind of take value from what you can from them. We're not saying this is gospel, this is exactly what it is. So that was the first thing. So it's about going, right, using this kind of model or using this thing, and what can we take from that, and going, I wonder if something is going on. So we're not using a model or using a framework or using whatever to diagnose things, but we're using it as a tool to kind of give us some grounds to go, this is showing up. So this behavior is showing up, or this reaction is showing up.
Yeah.
I wonder if something is going on for that person. And you kind of go down this route of exploring it, rather than going, that person isn't challenging, so they don't have challenger safety, and kind of going down that diagnostic route.
Yeah.
So, when we have these conversations, people are going, actually, little things, Roger, like how if you go into a conversation expecting the worst and not giving somebody that kind of benefit of the doubt, you're entering that conversation already maybe with your backup, and then that's going to get the other person's backup. And all these sorts of things, when we talk about psychological safety and encouraging people and supporting other people, again, you have all of these kind of, like you said, light bulb moments. People go, oh yeah, actually, if I'd have thought about that in a different way in that situation, maybe I would have got a different response. As you can probably tell, Roger, I get quite passionate about this.
Yeah, no, I can see. To be honest with you, Joe, I see in you what was in me about sort of good 15 years plus ago around the principle of emotional intelligence,
Mm.
actually. And looking at EQ and psychological safety together, I see that psychological safety, I don't know whether the authors, whether Tim Clark would disagree with this, but I kind of see it as almost like an evolution of some of the really important principles of emotional intelligence. If you're going to develop and encourage strong psychological safety in the team or the organization that you follow, you can't really do that if you don't have good emotional intelligence. If you can't read people, if you can't create, a situation where people are going to feel safe and to challenge and speak up and so on and so forth. So I think there's definitely I'm seeing in my mind a bit of a Venn diagram with a quite a lot of overlap, I think. Rightfully so. Yeah,
I do love a good Venn diagram sort of model. I can think of a few actually that would match quite well as well in terms of that. Yeah, I see where you're going with that.
So we've talked about it in a really, really positive light so far. Okay, and I don't think there's any argument that good, genuine psychological safety has so many benefits. I don't think I've yet to find anyone arguing against it. However, have you ever found that perhaps it's misused in some way, or have you heard of it being misused in some way?
Good question.
Perhaps where leaders might actually try and fake it if they're not actually being genuine.
Yeah, I think first of all, I know that there's a couple of bits of research kind of done about this.
Yeah.
And kind of reading about it. But I think, first of all, the point is, first of all, leaders sometimes might not want to, I don't want to say fake it, but more, again, they don't understand it.
Yeah.
And then they're trying to do it in a way that maybe then doesn't marry up and doesn't come across as authentic. There's not that kind of congruence. So I'm kind of saying something, I'm doing something, and then people are kind of going, well, that's not what I mean. An example from an article would have been, asking everyone or everyone knowing that full well what the answer is, or knowing full well what you're going to do, but still inviting others to kind of think about it without actually saying, well, I've got thoughts, I've got ideas, or whatever. And you're still inviting people, because people then are going to be kind of saying things like, or thinking things where it's like, well, I know that they know what they're going to do anyway, so what's the point of me saying what I'm going to do, because they're just going to go off and do their own thing anyway, and that's what they always do, So I think there's kind of I don't know if fake it is a strong word. I think it's that people don't necessarily understand how to use it to its, to how it's kind of intended. What are your thoughts, Rog?
So the one that I think I've seen a number of times without perhaps realizing it, but I've observed it in leaders that I've either worked alongside or even worked for at times, is when they ask for feedback, but actually they're just kind of paying lip service to it, and know that nothing's going to happen with it. And what's the point? And that's usually when you can hear a pin drop. If there's a sense that that's what's going to happen, that usually means that it's not forthcoming, or someone just says, "Well, what's the point?" I know. I can give you an example. So, back in my corporate days, when I used to manage a big logistics and engineering operation, I took over, particularly the engineering part, after they'd had successive managers. They'd had like 3 or 4 managers over the space of 2 years. And the very first question I got was, "Oh, how long are you going to be here for?" And I had a real uphill challenge to get them to win them over, basically, and get them to trust me that I would, be true to my word. And eventually I managed to build, I didn't use the term at the time because I wasn't aware of the principle, but looking back, I can see how I actually managed to build a psychologically safe environment, because actually the mechanism, interestingly, that I used for that was I brought in lean production management into the operation. And a lot of that focuses on root cause analysis. So where there's issues that go wrong, it's not about blaming, it's about getting to the root cause of it so that we can re-engineer the process so that it doesn't happen again. And looking back now, I can see how that was a real culture shift for them, away from you're all fucking useless, which was basically what the previous leaders had said to them. Because I remember actually one of them saying to me, "Why should we bother? We always get blamed, whether it's our fault or not." Yeah, and through sort of taking that different approach and using, all right, it doesn't have to be lean, but it just so happened that that's what the company was signed up to at the time. And on reflection, I can see how that started to build the psychological safety that we needed to really, and the bottom line impacts of all that work was that we managed to start to win the confidence of the wider organization back, because they were getting blamed for everything previously. And we started to open up new revenue streams, because our core business was in slow decline, and we knew that we needed to diversify, otherwise I was going to have to lay people off. So I was able to redeploy their skills, repackage the services that were offered by the division, and go out there and get new business from within the organization, because that's how it worked. We provided services to the organization. So so there was a direct bottom line benefit to it as well.
Powerful one there as well.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought of that. It just popped into my head. So there you go. And I'm supposed to be the one interviewing you.
Happens when you bring a coach on, Rog?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so let's wrap things up then. So, what would you say to any of our listeners that were thinking, "Oh, crumbs, I could probably do with improving the psychological safety a bit in my team or my area"? What would you say to them?
I'd first of all think about where they actually think the rest of the team are in relation to psychological safety. So have they picked up on things where people are falling silent, in meetings, in workshops? Are we noticing that maybe certain people are dominating conversations? Are there people that maybe, I don't know, almost seem to be not, I want to say passive aggressive, but not in a term that in the workplace, I mean. So say passive aggressive is if to say, I'm going to do that project, or I'm going to do that task, but then just never do it, or I'm going to go to that meeting and then never turn up to that meeting. So I'd start to try and first of all understand where your team are at. So where are people, what are people displaying? Yeah. And then from that, you can start to then build on it. So again, using that kind of, I wonder if something, one, is going on for that person that I could support, or two, what am I doing as a leader that could diminish psychological safety? Am I being authentic? Am I being congruent in my behavior, in my thoughts? I would kind of, I guess, again, I'm going around the houses here, but one, do a bit of reflection. Think about the behaviors that are showing up in your team, the things that are coming up. Yeah. And then do a little bit of reflection on yourself as well, in terms of, are you authentic, and are there areas that you can support psychological safety? Are you inviting challenge? Are you setting clear parameters around kind of roles and responsibilities for people in your team to provide autonomy? Are you making it an environment where people can learn, that learning is encouraged? Again, I've gone off on a tangent, Rog, sorry, but there's so many different things. But I think overall, just do a bit of reflection and think about how you can support it.
Okay. All right. And if anybody wanted to reach out to find out more about the work that you do and the psychological safety scan, which you mentioned, how can they do that?
You could go to our website and book a call. Do you usually put the link in, Rog?
Yeah, we'll put the link in the show notes, but most people know where we are.
Yeah. So there you go.
just go to therebegiants.com and you'll find a multitude of ways to reach out. Jo, thank you so much for lending me your time. I know you're super busy with our clients, and
it's always good to have a convo.
Yeah, it's always good to have a catch up. So, just want to say thank you to all our listeners. It's really great that you tuned in. There'd be no point in doing it otherwise, and we always appreciate your time. We are going to start soon doing some request shows. So if you've got any questions about OKRs and you're perhaps wanting a bit of advice, a bit of a Q&A, we're playing with that idea at the moment, so watch this space, and we're working out the best way for you to send in your questions to us. Hopefully something new coming. Okay, so that's all for now, and I'll see you again on another Giant Talk very soon.